Welcome back, and we're talking with Lorraine Snider-Hanley as author, composer, friend, and my mom. Hey, Mom.
Well, hello there.
So, we were talking about the church, and some of my earliest recollections, and actually some of my very favorite memories, come from my childhood and in the church. Why is the church important?
The church is important for growth of the spirit. Your spirit cannot grow unless you're in the right school. And the church happens to be the right school. You're with the right people, hopefully.
What do you mean, hopefully?
Well, there are churches that may not lead you in the right direction, and you have to use prayer, discernment, and know where God really wants you. Your heart will let you know. If Jesus is not the center of that church, then you do not belong there.
This might be controversial, but was church just a place for you to drop kids off and, like a daycare center?
Oh, certainly not. No, I never used the church as an excuse as I can dump the kids off. My children learned to sit in a pew very early on. If you remember right, as I played the piano, and if one of you made a noise, I gave you the eye. You knew you were in trouble. So yes, you children.
I remember the eye. Can a church body get sick?
Well, it certainly can. All churches can be fixed. I think the main focus in every church is that they forget one thing. Who is head of the church? Is it man or is it God?
So can a church really become like your family?
Absolutely.
So can family members act out just like a church body can act out?
Absolutely. There's always those that feel they have their way is the right way and the only way. And if you remember right, even within a family structure, you kids would have to sit down at the table and remember you only had one boss in the house, and that was your dad. And you'd have to go ask your dad first, and then your mother, and then we'd have to decide whether the answer would be yes or no. You have to have a structured top. You cannot have all be bosses. I'm going to just give you a little adage. I think it was Andy Capp that once said his wife Flo was going to church, and she said she tried to get Andy to go to church with her, and he said there's nothing but hypocrites there. That might be true, but she turned around and she told him, she said, well, there's always room for one more. So we're all hypocritical to some degree, but we all can't be bosses, and we all can't have the answer.
When I think about activities that we were doing, I remember so many activities at the church and so many things that you were involved in. And it's hard to remember a time growing up that we weren't involved in something at the church, or somebody wasn't. As we got older, more of the kids came over and more of the kids stayed longer, and sometimes that one activity blended into another and yet into another. Do you think that's important for for a child's growth as much as it is as an adult's growth?
I think it's real important for a child to know that the parents are as involved in their activities and the things that they love to do as it is for the parents.
You mean you can't just drop them off like you were dropping them off for a swimming class?
Oh, hardly. You have to be with them 100%. We are the book that they'll read. We are probably the only Bible they might decide to read. We are the image that they're looking at.
So all of the kids were involved at church?
They might have embraced it at the time, but as they began to leaving home, they found that the glitter and the life of the world looked really bright. And it wasn't as that they didn't love home. It's just that the lights of the world look greater.
Do you really think that it's important for the whole family to be involved?
Absolutely. It's exciting when the whole family's involved. Even though we may not like all the jobs we have within the realm of the spiritual world and the work of the church, it's important that everyone is involved in some way.
Did the kids challenge you?
Did they challenge me? No, I think that the things that they did challenge me.
Sure.
My children were, I raised 9 wonderful children, but the things that they did were the very things that tore at my soul many times.
I could imagine, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But while we're talking about kids, kids have childhood things, you know, childhood dreams, childhood illnesses. If one got it, did everybody get it?
Oh, well, most of the time. If one got the measles, they all had the measles. So you became the nurse for the week. And church activities all had to come to a halt.
At that time, though, you still could not afford insurance. Didn't you ever worry that you were just one step away from a disaster?
No, I never gave thought about disaster, but I thought in the event of me getting sick or your dad getting sick, who would take care of these children? That was my main concern. We had insurance several different times, and just about the time it would take effect, because you have to wait 90 days, your dad would run out of work, and that's the first thing you're going to skip.
Sure.
Yes.
So, well, if the choice is put food on the table
Or insurance.
Or no insurance, then the choice was no insurance.
It was not an option for us to get help, free help from the state, or get into some welfare program. That was not an option. It had been drilled into my head at an early age from my mother.
When your own father wouldn't
And
take
my own
it.
father, they would not take it when they came to America. They absolutely refused.
So as immigrants, even though they had an opportunity to get some sort of help, whether it was financial or food or you know, think of it as like today's food stamps or today's social help, they didn't take that.
They did not.
What was your dad's view on that?
If you take something, you're going to owe something. If you take something from someone, how do you pay it back? You don't receive something without payback in today's time, or even my dad's time.
So he had a sense of reciprocity. What you give, what you take, you give back.
Correct.
Would you say that sense of paying forward also existed in your family? So if you received something, let's say it's a blessing, that you pay it forward, you give that blessing to somebody else.
In my culture, if you saw someone in need, you helped them. You gave them food, you bought them shoes, or you bought them clothes. You did not give them money unless it was rent that you could help them with, and that was the only way my folks helped people.
And would there be an expectation that they would help back? Like, say, for instance, if there was a barn raising, they would be there to help raise the barn.
They would be there to help raise the barn, help with the turkeys when it was time to
whatever
pluck,
it was.
Whatever it was.
And you also married a guy that really wanted to be helpful to others, and found that in the church body to give. Can you think of an early instance when Dad did that?
Oh, the very first thing he came home he had only been in California about a year and a half, and he came home and he said, I've been asked to help stucco a church in Imperial Beach. And I said, but it's not the branch of church we go to. And he said, we help all churches, we help all people. And he went and gave his 2 or 3 days free labor for that church, which I was so thankful for.
Did he befriend people at the church also that needed help?
Oh, yes. There was a period of time that your dad and I were extremely mission-minded. And there was a time when we could collect cents off in a magazine. There might be $1 off or 50 cents off. We could save those, and there was a grocer in town that would take all those coupons. And we took them, cashed them in for beans, lard, cabbage, and carrots, and take it to a mission in La Rumorosa, Mexico, which is up in the mountains about 60 miles out of Tijuana.
So this sense of community has always been there.
Yes.
So is that sense of community still as important today?
I think it's just as important today that we, as just human beings, help our community in some way. We are part of the community. We are part of the community family of this town that you live in, of the city, of the community, church. Be part of that in every way. Give of your time, give of your resources.
Do you think that there's a point at which you can give too much?
No, I don't think there's a time when you can give too much. I believe that you should give over your tithe. You should give to missions. I feel sorry for the missionaries. Some of them have it pretty tough. But if I saw a child hurting, which I have, I've taken children in, and I believe that we can be of help in many, many ways. It doesn't just have to be through our monetary resources. There's other ways of helping.
Okay. So things improve. Things get better in your life financially. And was it easy for you to just turn your back on the old house and just jump into the new one?
That was not a cakewalk, because now at this point, we realize we have to get in a bigger home. And God supplied a wonderful, wonderful surprise to me and my husband one day. A realtor that we knew at church came to us and he said, you know, you're going to have to get out of this small home and get into a bigger home.
Wait a minute, with 8 kids, you think?
You think? Yes, we needed a bigger home, at least 2 bathrooms. You couldn't have an outhouse in the city. So my husband, your dad went and looked at it and came home and he said, I bought us a house, we're moving in on September during the Labor Day holiday.
Had he bought it or was he renting? Did he say it was a rental?
He had his mind he was going to buy it, but he didn't know how yet.
Okay.
So I said, well, tell me what the terms are. Well, we're going to have to rent it until we get enough money for a down payment.
And was that an option?
That was the only option.
Okay.
Renting it. So we moved in, and it was probably a blessing. With our greatest desire has been met. We've been praying for a bigger place. But in the meantime, the home that I had, the house that we were living in was a duplex. And I was renting out the other side to help pay for the payments. Rents went way down. Now here we are faced with paying rent in another house, keeping both units rented now instead of one. And I'm thinking, oh Lord, what am I going to do? Well, God has a wonderful way of working things out. We had bought the house, and don't be afraid to step out on faith, people, because when God makes a plan, you've got to be ready to take it. It might take you down a road that will give you the shakes once in a while. But
Does it come with a complete and detailed roadmap?
Oh, not hardly. Not hardly.
So then you have to actually act on faith or God's goodwill, or what would you say? What would you call it?
You act on faith and know that God will supply and meet the need in His time, not our time.
We were talking about the church, and some of my earliest recollections, and actually some of my very favorite memories. Do you really think that it's important for the whole family to be involved?
I think it's real important for a child to know that the parents are as involved in their activities. It's exciting when the whole family's involved.
Can a church body get sick?
There are churches that may not lead you in the right direction, and you have to use prayer, discernment, and know where God really wants you. Your heart will let you know. If Jesus is not the center of that church, then you do not belong there.
Kids have childhood things, childhood dreams, childhood illnesses. If one got it, did everybody get it? At that time, though, you still could not afford insurance. Didn't you ever worry that you were just one step away from a disaster?
We had insurance several different times, and just about the time it would take effect, because you have to wait 90 days, your dad would run out of work, and that's the first thing you're going to skip.
he had a sense of reciprocity. What you give, what you take, you give back.
Correct.
Would you say that that sense of paying forward also existed in your family? So if you received something, let's say it's a blessing, that you pay it forward, you give that blessing to somebody else.
We are part of the community. We are part of the community family of this town that you live in, of the city, of the community, church.
Do you think that there is a point at which you could give too much?
No, I don't think there's a time when you can give too much. I believe that you should give over your tithe. You should give to missions. I feel sorry for the missionaries. Some of them have it pretty tough. But if I saw a child hurting, which I have, I've taken children in, and I believe that we can be of help in many, many ways. It doesn't just have to be through our monetary resources. There's other ways of help. You act on faith and know that God will supply and meet the need in His time, not our time.